several things coming out of spring ball, several situations and circumstances. But before we get into that, recruiting news, Alabama landed a couple big commitments over the weekend. And, of course, none bigger than the younger brother of Tagovailoa, Talia, committing to the Tide on Saturday. I'm going to throw this out there as a hanging chat for us to discuss later. Was the Tagovailoas in their own way sending a message to the Alabama nation, to the Hurts family, and to others that it's a quarterback battle? If Jalen Hurts stays, Tagovailoa isn't going anywhere. They didn't move 4,000 miles across the country for one son to play and send another one with intentions of transferring. Is that what they were trying to communicate? I don't know, but it definitely sent a strong message to me that the Tagovailoas, starting with Tua, plans to compete outright when he's back healthy, and we hope that happens to compete for the starting job. Of course, we're going to talk about the results of the 8A game, the comments from last week. Have they pushed Jalen into a corner? Is he now forced to transfer after what we would call a subpar, in my opinion, subpar performance, especially the first half? Second half, not so bad, but we'll be breaking that down in just a few minutes. Also picked up a big commitment from Tanner Bowles, a big offensive tackle out of Kentucky, a name that hasn't been mentioned very much, but somebody that Alabama prioritized. With those commitments and the commitments from last week, Alabama jumps all the way up to the number one class. But before the night's over, Brendan Gant, a safety that committed in December, decommitted from Alabama after a visit to Florida State on the way home. I don't know if that's where he's going to commit or not, but he was one of the guys that Hank South and I had discussed would possibly decommit, and he did. So now Alabama's sitting at number 2. But all 4 stars on the board and some 5 stars headed Alabama way. So look for Alabama to reascend to the top. Last but not least, we mentioned something about Jalen and his father saying that he may transfer. Well, on this program about 2 weeks ago, we discussed that Alabama basketball would lose more than Colin Sexton from this team. One of the names we mentioned was Braxton Key as a possibility. The news broke yesterday that Braxton Key has decided to take his talent somewhere else. School, I have not ran across the school that he plans to go to, but here's a big-time player. I mean, guys, he wasn't at the level of Jalen, but here's a guy that was a freshman All-SEC, didn't have a great second year, and now he's leaving. Could we see the same thing happen on the gridiron? I don't know. I'm not even going to tell you what I think right now in terms of the Jalen. Let's go to Coach Saban, see what his comments were post A-Day. I'm going to tell you what my feelings were. Kind of left the stadium with some unique feelings that I normally don't have following a spring game. But here's what Coach Saban had to say in his opening comments post 8A 2018.
All in all, we made a lot of progress this spring. I'm pleased with the progress that we made, a lot of positions in terms of player improvement. I'm not necessarily satisfied with where we are, nor should I think that anybody on our team should be satisfied with where we are. I think that every individual would be able to point to something that would be able to improve, their performance. I think the biggest thing moving forward that we would like for the players to focus on is, this 5 or 6 weeks that are coming up in college football is probably the time when players are away from each other more than any other time in the year. We work out in the summertime, we have off-season program in the wintertime, we have spring practice in the spring, we have the season in the fall. But finishing finals is the most important thing right now, but then the players will be apart. So I think the most important thing for our players to do is focus on the individual improvements that they need to make. All right, so they have the best opportunity to outperform the people that they have to play against next year. And that starts with our first game against Louisville. But we have some great competition all year long in our league, so whoever we have to play against, and that should be what the players, the individual players, are looking to do, because those individuals will ability to do that and how much we can do that will certainly determine, how strong our team will be, because the individuals on our team will make the team be what it is. A little bit difficult, this spring with some of the players that we had out that are really good leaders and guys that really impact other people, but it created an opportunity for other players to have to step up and do that, and I was pleased with, the progress that we made in some of those areas. So all in all, we made a lot of progress this spring. Not completely satisfied with where we are, but certainly excited about the opportunities that we have to try to improve, over the summer and the individuals over the next 4 or 5 weeks on their own, so that, when we come into fall camp, we're going to, have a stronger team and more individuals that can go out there and play winning football.
Nick Saban saying he wants to find more individuals that can go out and play winning football. Now, James, it will be impossible for me to get past whatever I've said in the past, because no matter what I say, I've already got a comment from Mitchell Lamb asking me, do I still think Jalen should be the quarterback after the horrendous performance? If you listen to my show consistently all spring, before spring ever started, during spring, post-spring, after spring, I said if Tua Tagovailoa is healthy, I believe he will be the starting quarterback. But I felt like Jalen would have a role and that there was still a competition. Is there still a competition? Well, I don't even know if the kid's going to stay. But if he stays, there's still a competition, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lead dog in the doghouse or in the clubhouse, as they say in the golf world. Here's what I want us to do. I want us to do a couple things. First of all, I want us to pump the brakes on all of what we saw on both sides. Was the O-line as bad as we thought? Probably not. Was Jalen as bad as we thought? Probably not. Was Mac Jones as good as we thought? Probably not. Were the defensive backs as good as we thought they were? Probably not. However, there were some things that I personally hope to have seen when I went to the game. And so, anyone that listens to my show know that I want Jalen to be successful. I don't care. I want the best player to end up being the starter, and whoever that is, that's who I want to be the starter for Alabama, because I don't want because I played the game and because I have children that play sports, I don't ever want favoritism to lead to a kid who's better not getting on the field. That's why I always say that I believe that Tua is a better passing quarterback than Jalen. What I saw Saturday was heartbreaking. I left the stadium almost with a sense of depression, not from Jalen's overall passing percentage or anything like that. Here's the thing. I believe there was a ball put on the tee and Jalen didn't swing for the fence. And I don't think that Jalen was going to win one way or the other. If Jalen had a great spring, threw for 300 and something yards, it still wasn't going to change the fact that Tua was not out there. And the last image you got of Tua was winning a national championship. So even if Jalen had thrown for 300 and something yards, I don't think it would have changed the dynamics of the competition, because if you believe Tua, if that wasn't a fluke, and I do not believe it was against Georgia, then Tua's going to be the guy that you lean toward as being the better passer and the future quarterback at Alabama. However, if Jalen goes out and throws well and competes, it definitely sets up a better conversation and competition going into the fall. With that said, I was so disappointed that we didn't see Jalen throwing the ball, releasing the ball, letting the ball go. And that's Martin Houston's biggest concern walking away, was in that environment, nothing to lose, he still wouldn't let the ball go. You cannot, as a quarterback, end up with 15 carries and the leading running back only has 14. and you didn't have quarterback runs called. Most of those runs were scrambles. And some of those scrambles, I would give it to him. Some of those scrambles was because the O-line got well, but he pulled the ball. See, here was I got to go to a scrimmage, and I guess I saw him at scrimmage. He let the ball go. When he scrambled to throw the ball, so on and so forth. But he just didn't let it go. So ultimately, I'm going to give you my complete breakdown of why I think that's the case, because I do think that there were some things that contributed to that. But I still was disappointed that Jalen did not, to me, take full advantage of the opportunity he had. It was already he wasn't going to win the job yet on Saturday, okay? Because Tua's not out there. But the worst thing that could happen was the last time we saw Jalen against the Georgia team, and then when we saw him Saturday, it looked the exact same. And what I had seen in the spring in progression didn't happen. Was that because of the limitation of the offense? Some. But I still think it's all between Jalen Hurts' ears, and I don't know, can he get past it? I thought he could. I'm still pulling for him too, but I just didn't see enough that he could. I saw him get past it in the second half, but that's been the challenge that we've seen. Jalen, really good Jalen and really bad Jalen, and which one will we get? And for the majority of the year, really bad, that what we saw could win. But I thought he had made improvement, and I'm not going to jump off the ship in terms of his improvement because I know what the limitations of A are, but it still brings up concerns when it comes to Jalen. Let's bring in Gregory. Welcome into the Blitz. What's on your mind, man?
Oh, roll tide, Mark.
Roll tide.
I just want to give you my grade on the 8-day game.
Go ahead.
I give them C. I got for a whole group, I give them a C. The reason why, because my offensive line didn't look that great to me. And like Nick said in the interview, he graded by player to player, and he could do a little better. But how I looked at it, we had some injuries, and some of the key players was off and things like that there. But my thing is with Jada, you know what I'm saying? Of course, he probably hold the ball a little too long and didn't want to release it. I give him a C on that. But I give the coach who probably teaching the quarterback, I give him a D. Cause I ain't see him nowhere in the picture.
What you mean? I think he was the coordinator for the other side. I think he was the one calling the plays, wasn't he? Didn't Dan Enos call the plays for Jalen's team?
He was.
I think so. I was in the stands. I hadn't went back and watched the game. I was in the stands. Okay. I know Loxley was on one side, and most of the time the other assistant head coach or associate head coaches called plays on the other side. I think Enos was the one calling the plays. So, but you can't now Gregory. Anybody that listens to my show know I just call it like I see it. I want Jalen. I want Jalen to do well because of all the other things that he does. I want to see it translate on the field, but it just didn't. It didn't translate, but. You did see improvement in Mac Jones. So you can't grade Enos just on what you saw from Jalen. You have to grade him on both sides. And I understand, please pump the brakes on Mac Jones being this superstar and all of that. But the things that Mac Jones did from the start to the end was he threw the ball when the pass plays were called. He got out of his hands quick. Now, there's been a couple comments that Jalen held the ball, one read, and took off. I disagree with that. When Jalen took off immediately, it was because there was no pass protection. He went through his reads. If you go back in the second half, he went through his reads much better. But the problem is when he would scramble, sometimes he in the scrimmage I saw, he would throw the ball. You go back and look. When he scrambled Saturday, he was scrambling with the ball up to throw, but he never would pull the trigger. Now, in the second half, think about how many times he hit guys late in the routes. He did several of those things. But in the first half, He just didn't have confidence in what he was seeing. And that's my concern, is how much of it is in his head. Hey, Greg, I got to get the break here before my producer cuts me off mid-sentence. But appreciate the thoughts, man. Call back. Hey, this conversation is going to be going on all summer. All right, we'll be good. All right, Roll Tide. Getting a lot of comments on Facebook. One side saying it was quarterback play. One side saying receivers not going and running their routes. People talking about the article. Here's what I said when Tua got hurt, and I got attacked for this, but what I was trying to communicate was this. When Tua got hurt, I said, this could be good if Tua comes back completely healthy. Tua needs to come back completely healthy, is what my statement was at the beginning. And this could be a good thing. Why could it be a good thing? Because it would give Jalen an opportunity to win his team back and get his confidence back, okay? Win his team back and get his confidence back. Well, I went to a scrimmage, and I don't give details of what I saw in the scrimmage just because I want to honor being a player versus a media guy when they let me in as a player. But I can say that Jalen looked improved. Jalen looked like he had the confidence of his team, etc. Of course, this is a Saturday before A-Day. So I had zero problem with what his dad said. And I'm on record as saying that if Jalen was my son, he may have transferred after the national championship game. It may have not even got to the spring. The only concern I had with Jalen's dad's comments was the timing of the statement. And Mitchell Lamb, who's commenting on several different things, he makes a great point. And this is the point I said. This was an opportunity for Jalen to win his team back and win the confidence of his team back and get his confidence back. But what appears to have happened, and was it that one catalyst moment of the article? It didn't look like Jalen wanted to be there in the first half. It didn't look like the offense wanted to be there. Did Jalen lose the confidence of his team and the trust of his team and his own trust in that moment? Was that a moment that changed things? Because that didn't look anything like the kid I saw the week before, and it didn't look like the same Jalen. Now, with all of that said, and you've heard me talk about Jalen, and the wide receiver question is a chicken and egg question. Did the wide receivers quit on the routes, or did they know Jalen wasn't going to throw it? I don't know. Did Jalen not throw it because they quit on the routes, or did they quit on the routes because they knew Jalen wasn't going to throw it? Did they give maximum effort? Was there bounce in their step? Remember the last image we saw was Alabama wide receivers running all over the field. Was that complicated by the pass rush? Yes. Does a spring game – here's the thing. Jalen Hurts, I believe, can play SEC quarterback. I believe Jalen can play SEC quarterback at a high level. Jalen cannot play pass pro or pro-style quarterback. I mean, Jalen cannot be a great pro-style quarterback. I mean, guys, I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for that. I've never expected Jalen Hurts to be a great pro-style quarterback. Drop back and pass. Well, guess what happened Saturday? His first year, he had Lane Kiffin, a master at using your strengths. A master at using your strengths. Dable last year, what did we talk about all spring? Learning RPOs, doing RPOs. Did anybody notice that this spring, not one time did Saban say anything about RPOs? Did anybody notice that Saturday was nothing about a dual threat, hurry up, no huddle team? That takes Jalen's strengths out of the game right off the bat from the play calling. And then you add to the fact Jalen got sacked 7 times. He probably would have gotten sacked twice in a real situation. 7 of those sacks, now don't get me wrong, the pressure was hard, fast, and immediate. But Jalen's escapability, he probably would have gotten away from at least half of those sacks, if not more, because a lot of times it was just a tap. So that loses his strength. But that still does not show you or prevent you from seeing some of the limitations of Jalen, and that is that he just doesn't, for a full 4 quarters, will Jalen trust what he sees? Either he starts off slow or, well, let me say this. The last 4 games we've seen, or 4 times we've seen Jalen, is Auburn, Clemson, which Clemson wasn't bad, Georgia, and A-Day. And in those 3 of those 4 games, he did the same thing. And I can understand it. I think it was drilled into him, don't turn over, don't turn over, don't turn over. But Saturday, it was go win the job, kid. Go throw the ball. And I have my son beside me, Simeon, who loves Jalen. And he loves Jalen because I have shown him the way Jalen, the character that Jalen works with, the way he handles his business, the teammate he is, and all of those things. And that's the type of player I want my son to be in terms of all of the intangibles. So he loves Jalen. But I told him, I said, you watch this. I said, Jalen has to throw the ball today. Even if he doesn't make the completion, throw the ball. You have to let it go in order to give the receivers a chance to make a play. That's my biggest concern, or my biggest takeaway, is he's still holding the ball. And like I said, I'm hoping that Jalen doesn't go anywhere. But I pride myself on being a true analyst and not biased, even though I get accused of being biased. I pride myself on trying to be the truth. And the truth of the matter is, especially if the offense is going to have even a lesser component of a hurry-up, no-huddle, run, dual-threat guys, Tua took a lead in the quarterback race without playing a play, okay? Let's just call it what it is. I hope Jalen stays and fights, but he's got an uphill battle. And let me tell you why. Nick Saban can say what he wants in front of our press conferences, but his heart came through. And if you hadn't heard it, on ESPN, there was a live mic. Nick Saban is frustrated with Jalen, and he's frustrated for the same reason as a Jalen guy that I was. He won't throw the ball. He has to let the ball go and give his players a chance. You got to take the risk. Yes, Tua's going to throw a lot more interceptions. Tua's going to throw more interceptions than Jalen, but he's also probably going to throw more touchdowns, just like Mac Jones did. Mac Jones threw an interception, came right back, and threw the ball on a slant. So let's get the break here. I want you to give me your thoughts. I'm trying to get away from the Jalen conversation because there was a lot more than just Jalen in the game. But my closing thoughts on Jalen is this. I think the young man is the type of kid and player that I want my son to grow up to be, my children to grow up to be, my daughters to grow up to be. I really want that to happen. But let's take names off of jerseys. Let's take race out of the picture. Let's take everything away. You have to say that Jalen did not do what he needed to do to show that he was ready to hold off another guy. If there was no Tua, there would be very little concern. Let's just be real. Jalen would not be a bad option if there was no Tua, but there is a Tua. And if Tua, and here's the key, I'm not crowning Tua the job of the starter, because Tua has 2 challenges at least that he has to meet. First of all, he has to get healthy. And number 2, he has to come out and learn an offense and prove what we saw when you're the man, that he can duplicate what he did against Georgia. We still don't know that for a fact. Assumptive close is that he will be able to do that. It's just, man, I need to go back. I'm being told that the live feed wasn't what I think I heard. It's being taken out of context, but either way, it looks bad. It looks really bad. But even if Nick Saban didn't say that, I personally was frustrated because he wouldn't throw the ball. I mean, it's just – but I'm not going to jump off the cliff because I know what type of game it was. It was a spring game, 8A game, and Jalen's limitations were going to be magnified, and they were, especially in the first half, but he did bounce back in the second half. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of the good things he did that hopefully he can build off of. And then I'll give you my thoughts on whether I think the young man, what's next for Jalen in Alabama. As we continue to move along, it's been a pretty one-sided negative conversation about what Jalen did in the game. Let me flip that script just a little bit because I think part of that first half, there is I mean, I'm not even going to address the first half other than it was as bad as I've seen just because he just wouldn't throw the ball. Flipping to the second half, I think Jalen came out and he played much better. I think he made some throws. He went through his progression. I know some people saying, well, he still didn't go through his progression. Well, I disagree with that. When he had time in the pocket, Jalen went through his progressions. And he threw it. And there was two plays that he went through his progression on. One would have been a touchdown. The other would have been at least a big play and a big moment in the scrimmage. The pass to Irv Smith was not a great pass, but if you go back and look, he was buying time, and instead of taking off running, he actually stepped back, took a couple steps back, threw it. It didn't hit him right in the chest, but he was off balance, backing up. That would have been a great it'd have been a big play. It would have been a big touchdown. It would have been a big momentum change and probably would have changed our opinion a little bit of how Jalen played. Also, the pass to Damian Harris when he went through his progression all the way through and then checked down to Damian, that would have been another big play had Damian caught the ball. And then, of course, the deep ball to Devontae. To me, that was really the only true deep ball, pure deep pass that they called. They did call a couple, I call them mid to deep range, but not like fly routes because I don't think they wanted to show a lot of that. That was a good pass to Devontae, and he also had a good pass to Ruggs. But I come back to he had 15 carries in a game where they didn't call the running plays to the quarterback. Damian Harris had 5 carries. Najee Harris had 14. And I think Damian's carries was limited for a reason. And then Mitchell Lamb pointed out that one of the passes he threw that almost got picked off, he threw the ball. He saw it. He didn't release it. And then when he released it, it was behind the receiver. I agree. If he leads him out in front, and that's what they're talking about when you're talking about throwing a guy open, it's throwing it to where they're going, not where they're at. But you have to trust what you see to make that happen. But anyway, not giving up on Jalen, but the question is, will Jalen leave? And here's what I said. I said if Jalen Hurts is going to transfer, I think it needs to happen sooner rather than later. I really, really do. If he's going to leave the program, and hey, listen, I understand. I mean, if he wants to play quarterback and he wants to play, to me, and let me find the comment. Kevin Smith, who if you know, he didn't care one way or the other, but he does, come to sometimes to the defense of Jalen. He said Jalen needs to transfer right now because all we'll hear in offseason is how bad he played in the spring. He's fighting an uphill battle. Our system, this is a key. It's moved farther and farther away from this and more true with each progressive coach. Our system doesn't fit him. He needs to be in a hurry-up, no-huddle system that fits his ability, and he still has a red shirt. Kevin Smith once again saying Mac Jones was more impressive, even though it was versus the second team. There are other schools who would love a playmaker like him. He just needs to be in a system with RPOs similar to what Auburn did with Brandon Marshall. Home run comment by Kevin Smith, and I agree with that. If he's going to leave, though, to me, he needs to leave now. Because if he leaves in a similar fashion to what Blake Barnett did, I'm going to have the same feelings about Jalen that I had about Blake Barnett. And that's you quitting on your team. You either make that decision now, or if you go through the battle of the summer, then you stick it out. Now, you may ask for Saban to redshirt you and just say, hey, I'm going to stick it out, but I'm not going to play. But you don't leave. You give way to Mac Jones and you use your redshirt year being here. But if you're going to transfer, my thing is transfer now. I hope that's not the case. I hope the kid battles. I hope he stays and he fights. But if he was my kid, I know what I would be doing at this moment. I would be finding a place that fits his ability. I was a fullback. I would not send my son to play at Alabama right now if he was a fullback. I wouldn't. If I was, I mean, I wouldn't send him here because there's no fullback in this offense. And that's why I would not send him here. And Jalen's in the similar boat. He can play quarterback, but he has to be in the right system in order for that to flourish. As we give a few more takeaways, but let me answer Mitchell Lamb's question regarding Jalen. Martin, do you think Jalen needs the year off he would have if he were to transfer to work on his game, or do you think he could be ready to play immediately? I believe it's based on where he goes and what type of offense he goes to. Hopefully the young man will be able to figure out a role here that satisfies him. And like I said, I'm not giving up on the possibility of him starting simply because we don't know the progression of Tua in his hand and his health. But the question is, if Tua is healthy, if Tua plays the way he plays, play in the championship game, if that translates, then we all after Saturday have probably a pretty good idea of where things are going to go. And if that's going to be the case, and he's going to stay here, I think he can have an absolutely dynamic role if he's not going to be the starter. But if he wants to go somewhere where he wants to be the man, and there is not that – this is what I call it. Saturday, to me, Saturday was an opportunity. This is what I saw going into Saturday's game. Now, if you were to tell me, Martin, I need you to go out and run a 440, I couldn't do it. You see what I'm saying, James? I'd pass out before I made the 440-yard trip around the track. But if you tell me, Martin, you got to run a 440, I say I can't do it. All of a sudden, you release a vicious pit bull, I'm gone, baby. I'm running wide open for 440 yards, right? Well, to me, Jalen was being chased by a pit bull who wasn't even out there, and that pit bull was Tua. And the whole thing Jalen needed to do was show that he would throw the ball, show that there was progression. And I understand the offense was limited, and the way the 8A is set up is going to limit Jalen. However, there was times where guys, they weren't open yet, but the anticipation has to be there, and then you have to let the ball go just a second or two early, back to like the Henry Ruggs touchdown that was behind him. He throws that a second earlier. It's going to it's going to be a big play. I don't know about a touchdown, but it's going to be definitely a big play. So I think he needs to either find within this system something that fits him with a package, or he does need to look at an opportunity that's going to allow him to do what his desire is, and that's his dream, to play and start at quarterback. He's going to be chased by Tua, and guys, I wanted to see improvement in a big way. I saw some improvement, but I don't know if it's enough to stay off a Tua. But I'm not calling it over yet, but there's definitely a leader in the clubhouse. Last but not least, let's talk a little bit about a couple other takeaways. We had a poll question up. That poll question was, biggest takeaways, D-line really good, Jalen's limitations, Boulevard's much improved, and O-line poor protection. The reason I give Jalen part of a reprieve is the O-line pass protection was abysmal. But at the same time, you have to flip the script and go, was it abysmal because there was a really, really good D-line play? And I was asked this question on an interview that'll run today on SEC Country about Raekwon Davis. And I said, if you put number 80 on Raekwon and 94 on Bugs, I promise you'll think you're watching the 1992 defensive line, because Raekwon Davis gets after it, and so does Isaiah Bugs, and they reminded me so much of my two teammates, Copeland and Curry, and that was tough. That was tough for those young freshmen. Leatherwood and Wheels got introduced to big boy football in a big way on Saturday. Josh Casher coming in, getting a lot of reps. I think he showed that he can help the team out, so that's going to be interesting. But I'm going to close this segment this morning with Joseph Boulevard. I really didn't know what to expect from this kid after what I saw last year, but you have to give him kudos. You have to give him a shout-out for responding. His kickoffs, man, he kicked it not in the end zone. He kicked it through the end zone on several occasions. So kickoff, that's huge. It's not just the field goals. If your defense is young, you want the other team to have to go as far and as long as they have to every drive. And he was maximizing that by, especially with this new rule where you can fair catch and get it at the 25, he was maximizing the impact of that by kicking it through the end zone. And then on the field goals, I give him a B, and I'm going to tell you why I give him a B. Because the two he missed were game crunch time kicks. The one he missed was the white team goes down and scores. And then Mac Jones comes down and leads his team back down in a 2-minute drill right before the half. And it's a chance to make a field goal. And he missed it. That tells me pressure, burst pipes, and all the other kicks were good kicks that he made, but that was one that's a game changer, James. Go back to Georgia beating Oklahoma when they got the field goal right before halftime, and then that momentum carried over. So if that had been a regular game, we would have ended the half on a very, very poor note, okay? That was one of the concerns. That's why he got a B. That's why he's not getting an A yet. And then the other reason is 12-14. Jalen leads his team down to take the lead if they make the field goal, and he misses it. Once again, a game-changing pressure moment, and he missed it. That's my only concern with the kicking is the two pressure kicks at the end of the first half and then at the second half, he missed both of them. Now, did he miss them bad? No. Did one of them potentially, the wind, push it off? Yes, but what if you kick in the wind? You have to learn to adjust, and that's what he'll learn over the summer is how to adjust for the wind and the breeze. And so overall, I'm going to give him a B, but I think competition coming in will only make Boulevards better. And here's the key. That's a kicker that has 4 years left. So I really don't want to say if we can make it through this year and he's not be good. That's not what we want. We want him to be kicking at a high level, and he did. It's just the two pressure situations got him as we came down. All right, well, overall, A-Day was a good day. We talked a lot about Jalen Hurts and his limitations, and, of course, we'll talk about that all spring. Is he going to transfer? Did his dad back him into a corner? Probably, possibly, most likely. And did the Tagovailoa send a message that there's going to be a quarterback battle as long as Jalen stays, because they allowed Talia, their youngest son, to commit, And if that with that commitment, that tells me that the Tagovailoas aren't planning on going anywhere. No transfer in sight.